Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update. This week, we asked Victorian electors what they think of the new opposition leader John Pesutto. Would he make a better Premier than Daniel Andrews? And how Andrews himself is faring in the mind of the electorate. I can reveal that the results are surprising. But first, turning to national politics, it's 1 year since the election of the Albanese government. It's been smooth sailing for most of that period for the government, with a consistent lead in the Roy Morgan poll, despite some ups and downs along the way. Although US President Joe Biden cancelled his trip to Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was in Japan for the G7 meeting over the weekend, meeting with key allies and partners, including President Biden. But the trip to the G7 didn't translate into an increase in support for the federal government, as we might have thought. Support for the Albanese government was down 1.5% to 55.5% on a two-party preferred basis, while support for the coalition increased 1.5% to 44.5%. This is still up about 3.5 points for Labor on last year's federal election result, which the ALP won with 52.1% of the vote. And government confidence this week was virtually unchanged at 93.5, still below the neutral level of 100. Now 45.5% of Australians say the country's heading in the wrong direction, and 39% say the right direction. There was an improvement for the ANZ Roy Morgan Consumer Confidence Rating this week, up 1.4 points to 77.3. off last week's 3-year low, but it's still an extraordinarily low number, and consumer confidence has now spent 12 weeks below the mark of 80, the longest period at recession levels since the index began. Consumer confidence for those paying off their homes dropped 3.2 points to 67.2 this week, close to the record low that was recorded at the start of COVID-19 pandemic, and is now lower than for all others. If we look at renters, consumer confidence of renters jumped this week, up 9.6 points to 83.9 after the federal budget, which increased job seeker payments. And inflation expectations, they were down 0.2 percentage points to 5.1% this week. So that means Australians now expect annual inflation of 5.1% over the next couple of years. So inflation expectations are now just below the average of the last 7 weeks. That was 5.2% since early April. Now let's return to Victoria. And the first Roy Morgan poll of Victorians since last year's state election finds the ALP has significantly increased its lead since the state election in November last year. On a two-party preferred basis, the ALP is now on 61.5%, up 6.5 percentage points since November, and well ahead of the coalition on only 38.5%. Looking back over the last 5 years, since 2018, this is the largest lead the ALP's held since the 2018 state election. So when it comes to who'd make the better Premier, the result is even better for Daniel Andrews. 64% of Victorians say he would be the better Premier, compared to only 36% who nominate Liberal leader John Pesutto. However, it's not all good news for Premier Andrews. His personal job approval has fallen since the state election. Now 52.5% of Victorians, still a majority, but down 6 percentage points since November, approve of the job Daniel Andrews is doing as Premier. Less than half, 47.5%, disapprove. That's up 6 points. To give him, though, a net positive rating of 5%. Opposition leader John Pesutto is in no better a position. A majority, 53.5% of Victorians, disapprove of the job John Pesutto is doing as opposition leader, while only 46.5% approve, giving him a net negative rating of 7%. finally, it's clear that the Liberal leader John Pesutto's handling of MP Moira Deeming and her attendance at a neo-Nazi infiltrated rally in March and her eventual expulsion from the Parliamentary Liberal Party just over a week ago did him no favours. There's a lot more detail in this survey, including why people approve or disapprove of the leaders. It's on the Roy Morgan website. And that's a wrap for this week. Subscribe free to our Roy Morgan YouTube channel for all the latest political, economic and market research data and insights. Thanks for listening today. We look forward to having you back next week. Take care. We'll see you next Tuesday.